Okay, so everyone, welcome to the channel Kitsu Play. Today's episode is with our wonderful CEO, James Kirkby. So we're going to do a 15-minute segment here into programming, sort of the background of James and why he's sitting where he is today. So James, welcome to the channel. I think everyone knows you in the audience anyway. But for those that don't, could you please give us a bit of an intro and a background to yourself and your career?
Sure. So as you said, I'm James. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kitsumon. I got into programming when I was quite young. So when I was around 13, I started programming just for fun. Then went to university to study computer science, and then started working professionally when I was at university. And been working now in the industry for around 18, 19 years.
Awesome. And in that kind of background, were there any particular companies that stood out for you that kind of maybe made you what you are today, or when you perhaps noticed that this is definitely the career path that I want to go down?
Yeah, well, I was actually as I said, I was actually at university at the time when I started when I started professionally working. So I was in my second or third year, and there was a company at the university that was doing some like tutorials and some lessons as part of our course. Who also had a development software development studio at the actual university grounds, and I started working for them. And they were a very good company, actually. They were kind of a very high level software engineering company. So they kind of taught me the best practices of how to approach kind of like large software projects. So at the time, we was doing things for Greater London Authority, Highwire, Stanford University Press, Nuffield Foundation. So kind of like big companies. And I was in charge of doing a lot of the front end development for them. And yeah, working for them was good. As I said, it was kind of I was working with a lot of good programmers who at that time had been probably working again in the industry for like 10, 15 years. So I kind of got to learn from some of the best people from that field, which was quite good. And then it just set me off on a journey of wanting to learn more and keep on improving as a programmer.
Oh, that's awesome. And was there any kind of like inspirational character person or something along that way that kind of like inspired you, if you like, a bit more to go like maybe a hero or something in that space of field of
Yeah,
work?
there was one guy that I worked with. He was called Peter, actually, and he was kind of like at the time the epitome of like software engineering nerd, kind of a bit kind of like Sheldon-esque from Big Bang Theory. But it was kind of cool. Like he just like if you ever had any question, he just knew the answer. We was working on this framework at the time called Drupal, and if you ever had any question about anything, he would just be able to like know exactly what file that this bit of code was related to. And I can just remember and thinking like, if I could get as half as good as that in the future, then I would be kind of happy. Just because he had a very high level of software engineering. And I think ever since then, I've always wanted to try and achieve that higher level of programming, rather than just like some attitude where it's just kind of get it done and get it done quickly. They always wanted to push me into doing better.
Oh, that's awesome. And I guess like there's almost like the traditional kind of the programming that you've kind of grown up with and got used to. Obviously, like Web3 is here now. How did you find that like transition across from like traditional programming into the Web3 programming? Was it similar? Did you find any barriers in that kind of time frame when you were switching over to this particular space that we're in now?
Yeah, well, when I started, there wasn't even a concept of Web3. So I got back in this in like 2012, 2013, when it was mainly Bitcoin orientated. So there really wasn't, everyone knew that they wanted to do something with blockchain, but there wasn't any kind of ecosystem as there is today. So there was no concept of Web3. There was no concept of like the Web3 libraries, and it was just kind of a very like early hacker movement of people trying to build stuff and get things working. And it was kind of a cool time because there was a lot of people trying to make this ecosystem that we see now. So there was lots of like interesting working groups, lots of interesting hackathons at the time, lots of interesting like personalities in the industry trying to make this what it is now. So as a programmer, the main problem of that is that programmers usually like to read, and they like to read the documentation, they like to read the tutorials and get like this kind of input from other people of how to do things and how to do things right. But at the time there was just nothing, so it's kind of like a wild west. But it was also kind of interesting because we got to like kind of shape a lot of how this current world of Web3 programming really works.
No, that's great. And well, it's obviously a exciting thing to come along for everyone really. And I guess like, is there any kind of like perhaps not necessarily for yourself, but like in general in the world, like is there a piece of programming or a use case of programming that really stands out for you? Like I said, whether it's individually or both in the real world as well.
Um, I mean, there's obviously the Bitcoin protocol in itself. What I think a lot of people don't realize about programming is that there's so many people out there who are contributors to what we call open source software. So these are people who are either in their own time or through their employment or whatever kind of write software and write free software that they might publish it as a small library, and then it gets used millions and millions of times, and it might just be a very simple piece of code, but then it comes integral to some larger system, or comes integral to some kind of like famous website, for example. So with Facebook we have the React libraries that kind of changed a lot of how the front end paradigm of coding worked. So, I mean, there's not sometimes very big pieces of software, but sometimes there's very little pieces of software, but that make a big difference. I think that's kind of the cool thing about programming. You don't have to sit there and write this kind of like symphony of code. You can just write something very small and very useful, and have a very big impact in the world of programming.
Yeah, that's fair. And is there anything like maybe that you see in the near future or distant future where maybe it's applicable to the world that it could help improve it further? Or is it just something that maybe you see as a development of just programming in general, particularly I guess in blockchain and Web3, that you're most excited about? As I said, whether it's short term or long term, what kind of stands out in your mind that we might see in the near future?
Well, yeah, as I was saying in the last question, I think Bitcoin really kind of was a monumental piece of software as it kind of started to change people's perception of what they could do with programming. It was no longer that you could just make a website and do something kind of very simple that didn't kind of change the world or change how people perceive it. But the Bitcoin protocol really like opened up people's minds that they could do stuff with programming that was almost like social good. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's a kind of a social warrior, but it does enable people to build more democratic software and democratic systems and ways of thinking. So one of the not cool things, but one of the interesting things I read recently was about a DAO that managed to revert some of their funding from a larger project. And I think that's kind of the epitome of where Web3 and this new paradigm of programming is going. But it's really making not just software, but a lot of the kind of like internet culture and internet systems that we use more democratic. And I think that's one of the most interesting things that I see at the moment.
Oh, that's awesome. And I guess like, don't worry, I've got a couple more questions for you. But where you are today with Kitsumon, how did that come about? And what was the influence of the programming side that made you think that actually, yeah, we can build a game here? It'd be really cool for the whole audience out there to sort of understand like how that came about, and what were there any like barriers from the coding or the programming side that you thought, oh, actually, yeah, we can do this. We can do this.
Hmm.
We can build this.
Sure. So one of the main drivers of starting Kitsumon for me and Sanjay was is that we worked in blockchain for some time, and it got to the point where, and I guess this happens to a lot of developers, you get kind of like pigeonholed into doing a kind of a certain subset of programming. So we'd started working with a lot of like financial service companies, and ended up building like a lot of wallets, blockchain protocols, and it was kind of getting a very samey, very similar. And then I knew Sanjay for quite some years, and I knew that he was an avid gamer as well, and a very good programmer. And we kind of just wanted to do something fun. And that's one of the key things about programming. People usually get into it because it's fun. So we wanted to do something that was away from the traditional kind of financial services that we're used to, and do something with programming and to build something that we would enjoy. And we felt that if we would enjoy it, other people would enjoy it. Um, on one of the kind of like the programming sides or the technical sides or the limitations, one thing with blockchain programming in particular is that sometimes you start off with these very big, grandiose ideas, but because of the limitations of what the blockchain is, and the languages and what you can do with it, you have these big ideas and then you have to try and make them fit into the blockchain model. So doing something like Kitsumon on a centralized system would be super easy. You won't have to worry about gas limits or how big your transactions are. But some of the challenges, and I guess some of the challenges of which are also fun, is then trying to make these complex systems and these complex ideas then trying to work on the blockchain without compromising the initial idea, and still making them usable, still trying to make them kind of somewhat efficient, somewhat, well, definitely secure, with inside of the limitations of Solidity or blockchain programming in general.
So I guess like with this whole interview, it's going to be very influential for people out there that are starting their career in programming and coding, or maybe just literally already on a course. What would you say to those people to encourage them to continue this journey in this programming field? What advice would you give?
Um, so as advice, keep on learning. Always keep on trying to learn and trying to do learn new things, learn new skills, learn new languages and frameworks, and keep on trying to progress, because the industry in the space is always moving. So what you learn now won't be the same as what you're learning or what you're using in 10 years' time. And words of encouragement is keep on at it, because like you have the ability to get involved in a space that can change, not just as I said, change the space itself, change quite quickly, but it can have a massive influence on just the world and what is used around you. And I think that's one of the best feelings when you write a software system that's actually used by people. It's nice to know that something you've created or you've been part of a team that's created that's actually used by lots of people. And that's like I say, whether that's making a system or whether that's making like I said before, like about open source libraries or making blockchain systems. When as a programmer, having someone use your stuff is like the ultimate pat on the back, really. And when you have that, I think it's a good feeling, and you keep on wanting to produce more. So yeah, keep learning, and just keep plugging away at it, because what you do have a big impact in the future.
Well, that's great. Influential leading words there from our CEO, James. You won't believe this, but we're pretty much bang on 15 minutes, which is fantastic. So that just leaves me to say that I hope everyone out there has enjoyed this. We'll do more of these kind of things in the near future as well with other team members, and I'm sure we'll get James back on here at some point in the coming weeks and months. So James, thanks for joining us here. Been an absolute honour and great to learn more about you as well. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and hopefully
No
we'll see
worries.
you on here very soon.
Yeah, definitely sounds good.
Nice one. Bye bye, guys. Thank you.